Welcome back to another episode. Don't forget to like or give a 5-star review if you are on Spotify. Tonight's story is horrifying, so I hope you're ready. Let's start. Terminal 7. I want to be clear with you before I get into this. What I'm about to describe happened on the night of November 3rd, and I've gone over it so many times since then that I've worn grooves in it. I know what I heard. I know what I felt. And I know how it sounds. So, let me just tell you what happened. I'd been at Terminal 7 for 11 months by then. Grain elevator, Port of Tacoma, graveyard shift. The kind of job you take when you need to not be around people for a while, and you also need money, which is a specific combination of needs that a divorce tends to produce. The maritime hazard supplement helped, 22% on top of base rate, just for working in a structure that could, under the wrong conditions, turn into a very large concrete bomb. Grain dust is explosive. Most people don't know that. I didn't know that before I started. The elevator itself was 14 stories of poured concrete, and the inside of it was this dense maze of conveyor belts, pneumatic transfer pipes, and storage bins called galleries. It smelled like dust and old metal, and something faintly sweet that never went away no matter the season. My job was sensors and catwalks. Every 2 hours I walked the inspection route, 3rd floor to 12th, checking gauges, logging readings, making sure nothing was grinding or leaking or building, toward the kind of event that made the supplement pay feel very reasonable. Between walks, I sat in the 4th floor control room with a thermos of gas station coffee and watched the sensor board. It was routine. It was genuinely routine. 11 months of almost nothing. The 1 a.m. walk finished clean. I logged it, hung my clipboard on the hook by the door, and sat down with what was left of the coffee. It had gone cold about 40 minutes earlier, and I drank it anyway because that's the kind of person I'd become. The moisture alarm went off at 1:14, not a general alarm. A specific one. Gallery 9. I looked at the board and then I looked at it again because Gallery 9 was sealed. Had been sealed since September when the last load shipped out. No grain, no residue, nothing. The bin had been cleaned and locked before the seasonal slowdown. Moisture sensors in a grain elevator work by measuring the water content in the grain itself. Empty bin, no grain, no reading. That's just how the physics of it works. There was nothing in Gallery 9 for the sensor to measure. I was still staring at the board when the temperature reading spiked, 40 degrees in 6 seconds. I watched the number climb in real time. The sensor was on the interior wall of the bin, and it went from 51 to 91 before it stopped moving. 6 seconds. I timed it against the clock on the wall because my brain needed something concrete to do. I picked up the radio. Control to Dean. You on? Brandon came back in maybe 30 seconds, which meant he'd been awake. He was usually awake. 20 years with the port does something to a person's sleep schedule. Dean, what is it, Lynch? Not a question, exactly. More like a statement of mild inconvenience. I told him what the board was showing. Moisture trigger in a sealed empty bin, temperature spike, both readings still active. He was quiet for a moment. I heard him breathing, heard what sounded like a chair shifting. Sensor malfunction, he said. We had a capacitance probe go bad on 6 last winter. Same symptom. The temperature reading went 40 degrees in 6 seconds. Bad probe. I didn't say anything. Lynch. You know what a maintenance call-out costs after midnight? He didn't wait for me to answer. Walk down there. Eyeball the hatch. If it's sealed, it's a bad sensor. We log it and deal with it in the morning. Don't make me call Karen Davidson at 1:30 a.m. over a probe. I said fine. He clicked off. Gallery 9's access hatch was on the basement level below the main conveyor floor. I took the service ladder, which ran down the exterior of the bin housing, in a channel just wide enough for one person. The rungs were cold. They're always cold down there, even in summer. Something about the concrete and the way the structure sits over the water table. That night they were colder than usual, which I noticed. and then told myself meant nothing. The hatch looked right. That was my first thought when my feet hit the floor. Standard oval access door, heavy gauge steel, with a 6-point locking mechanism and a padlock through the hasp. The padlock was closed. The dogs were all seated. No warping, no frost, no condensation on the outer surface. I stood there for a second. Bad probe. That's what this was. I put my ear against the door. The sound was low enough that I felt it before I heard it. A compression, deep and slow, in, then out. One full cycle in what I counted as close to 60 seconds. Like breathing, except no living thing breathes that slowly. I stood there and counted. 62 seconds. Then again. 59. I pressed my palm flat against the steel. The door moved. Not much, a fraction of a millimeter, maybe less. But it moved, pulsing outward against my hand in the exact same rhythm. In, out, in. I did not move my hand. I don't know why, I just stood there in the cold with my palm against that door, feeling it breathe. Now I don't remember how long my palm was flat against that hatch. Long enough that my knees had started to ache, I guess. Long enough that the cold coming up through my boots had worked its way into my ankles. I finally pulled my hand back, stepped away from the door, and just stood there in the dark for a second with my fingers curled against my chest like I was trying to keep the feeling off them. Then I went back upstairs. The control room is on the 4th floor, small space, desk, 2 monitors, the radio unit, a folding chair with a cracked armrest I'd been meaning to report for 6 months. The overhead light has a slow flicker that you stop noticing after the first week. I noticed it that night. I noticed everything. I sat down and pulled up the camera interface. Terminal 7 has internal inspection cameras in each gallery, fixed mount units, low resolution, installed back when the port upgraded their incident documentation system. I'd used them maybe 4 times in 11 months, mostly to verify a sensor read before making the walk down. They're not sophisticated. They give you a grainy gray image and a 2-second audio delay, and that's it. Gallery 9's feed came up on the right monitor. I looked at it for a moment before I understood what I was seeing. The bin was empty. I knew it was empty. Cleaned out, sealed since September, no grain, no equipment, nothing. The camera was mounted high on the north wall and looked down at an angle, so you got most of the floor in frame. Concrete. Dust lines along the edges where the last auger pass hadn't quite reached. The floor drain in the lower right corner of the frame, and something in the middle of the floor that had no reason to be there. Pale. Roughly the size of a chest freezer, maybe a little longer. It was lying flat, oriented with its length running roughly north to south in the frame. The surface had a sheen to it, that low-resolution gray-white that catches light differently than concrete does, and it was moving. Slowly, steadily. A rise and a fall. Rise and fall. I told myself tarp. I said it out loud, actually. That's a tarp. Like if I said it first, it would stick. I leaned forward and hit the zoom. The image degraded. It got blockier, but the shape got bigger, and I could see the surface texture now, and it wasn't a tarp. Tarps have folds. Tarps have grommets, seams, something. This surface was continuous. Smooth except for what looked like a faint ridge running down the center lengthwise, the way a seam runs down the back of something that's been. I stopped that thought. Abandoned equipment. That was the next one. I cycled through what could have been left in a sealed bin after a full cleaning and came up with nothing, but I tried anyway. Some kind of bladder tank, a survey balloon that had partially deflated. I knew I was doing it. I knew it even while I was doing it, and I kept doing it because the alternative was accepting what I was actually looking at. Then the surface split, right along that center ridge. It opened maybe 4 inches along its length. I couldn't tell exactly, the resolution was bad, and from the audio feed came a sound that I can't describe well and I've tried. It wasn't loud, it wasn't a scream. It was low and wet, and it had a kind of texture to it, like something with a lot of moving parts producing one sound together, and it lasted maybe 3 seconds and then stopped. I was standing up. I don't remember standing up. My hand was already on the radio. Dean, Lynch, it's... I heard him check something. Almost 2:40. What do you want? I pulled the Gallery 9 camera feed. Silence. There's something in the bin. Lynch, I'm looking at it right now. On the monitor. It's... I stopped. Started again. It's roughly 2 meters long. It's on the floor. It's breathing, Brandon. The surface just opened, and there was a sound, and I need you to tell me what I'm supposed to do right now. The pause was different this time, longer. When he came back, his voice had dropped. Is your control room door locked? What? Your door, right now. Is it locked? I crossed the room in 4 steps and turned the deadbolt. Yes. Do not open Gallery 9. Each word separate. Flat. You understand me? For any reason. Do not open that hatch. I wasn't planning. I'm calling Davidson right now. You stay in that room. You keep that door locked. You don't go anywhere near that bin. A pause. And then, I'll call you back. Static. Then nothing. He didn't call back. I waited 10 minutes, then 15. Then I tried the radio and got silence. Tried again at the 30-minute mark. Tried again at 40. Just dead air each time. That flat carrier hiss that tells you the channel is open, but no one is transmitting. I sat in the folding chair and watched the Gallery 9 feed. The shape kept its rhythm. Rise and fall. Rise and fall. At some point, I pulled the monitor closer to me, which in retrospect was a strange thing to do at 3:17 a.m. I was looking at the wall clock when it happened. The exterior handle of the control room door moved downward, no footsteps before it. The catwalk outside that door is metal grating, and it rings when you step on it. I'd heard it 1,000 times, and there had been nothing. No footsteps, no approach, no sound at all. Just the handle, pressing down against the lock. It stopped, then it moved again. Slow this time. Holding at the bottom of its travel, like whatever was on the other side was feeling for the resistance. Testing how much give the lock had. I didn't move. I don't think I was breathing. I killed the light. Just reached up and hit the switch without thinking, and the control room dropped into dark. The only illumination left was the monitor glow and the thin strip of orange safety lighting bleeding under the door from the catwalk. I don't know exactly when I moved from the chair to the back wall. I just know that's where I ended up, spine pressed flat against the shelving unit, hands braced against the metal edge of a binder I'd never opened, watching the door's reinforced window. The glass in those windows is wired, safety glass, small and rectangular. Not big enough to see much through. Just enough. Whatever came up those stairs did not ring the grating. I heard nothing before it appeared in the window. No approach, no vibration, no displaced air, nothing. It was just suddenly there, and then it moved past the glass in a way I'm still trying to find words for. Too tall. I mean, it was wrong for the door frame. Like if it had turned toward the door, it would have had to duck. And the door frames in Terminal 7 are standard industrial height. And narrow. Not thin, the way a person is thin. Narrow like something that had learned what a vertical shape should look like, but had gotten the proportions slightly off. The gate is the part I keep coming back to. The way it moved toward the service ladder, and I could track it through the window as it went, just the edge of it passing. Careful, like someone walking on ice for the first time. Like something that had recently figured out that this was how you moved through space and was concentrating on doing it correctly. It was gone in maybe 4 seconds. Then, just the orange safety strip under the door again, and the monitor glow, and the sound of my own breathing, which I was suddenly very aware of. I stayed against that wall for 40 minutes. At some point my legs started shaking. Not trembling, shaking, like my quads had decided to simply stop cooperating. I slid down the shelving unit until I was sitting on the floor with my knees up and my back still against the metal edge of the binder, and I stayed there and watched the clock. At 4:17, I stood up, crossed to the desk, and looked at the Gallery 9 feed. Empty. The bin floor, concrete, dust lines, the floored drain in the lower right corner, all of it visible and clear. Whatever had been lying there was gone. What was left was wet concrete in the rough outline of where it had been, the shape of something that had lain flat for a long time and left an impression in the accumulated grime of an empty sealed room. That outline was maybe 2 meters long, maybe a little longer. I stared at it for a while. Then I logged out of the camera interface, picked up my thermos, still had an inch of cold coffee in it, no idea why I grabbed it, and left. The exterior emergency staircase runs down the south face of the building. It's open to the weather, metal, painted safety orange, and it had been raining since sometime around 3 a.m. The kind of Pacific Northwest rain that isn't dramatic, just persistent and cold and everywhere, soaking through flannel before you've made it down 2 flights. I was moving fast. Too fast for wet metal stairs at 4 in the morning, and I knew it, and I didn't slow down. The railing caught me on the 7th floor landing. I'd misjudged the turn. My boot slipped on the grating, and I went into the rail sideways with my left rib cage taking the full impact. The sound it made was not a good sound. I grabbed the rail with both hands and held on and breathed through my teeth and waited to find out how bad it was, bad enough. Not punctured lung bad, but bad. Every inhale felt like something grinding. I made it down the remaining 7 flights, holding the rail with both hands, moving slower. The rain was soaking through everything by the time I reached the ground level. My flannel shirt, my company jacket, my hair. The thermos was still in my left hand. I'd held onto it through the whole fall. The main gate security booth is a prefab structure, 12 by 12, sitting at the terminal's vehicle entrance about 300 meters from the elevator complex. Harrison Curtis worked that gate on the overnight shift. I'd seen him maybe twice in 11 months, waved through on my way in. Brief nod on my way out at shift change. He always had his radio clipped to his shoulder, and a cup of something hot on the desk inside. The booth was lit from inside. I could see the light from 50 meters out. I knocked on the glass. Nothing. I knocked harder. The door wasn't latched properly and it swung inward when my knuckle hit it, and Harrison was right there, sitting in his chair, head tilted back at an angle that looked uncomfortable, eyes closed. His radio was on his belt, not his shoulder, crackling low-level static. The cup on the desk was still steaming faintly. I put 2 fingers against the side of his neck. Pulse was there, steady. Breathing was there. He just wasn't there. Not in any way I could reach. I said his name twice. Nothing. I put a hand on his shoulder and shook him. Not hard but firm, the way you'd wake someone up. Nothing. His radio crackled. Just static. I stood there in the doorway of the booth, with rain running off my jacket onto the threshold, and looked at him for a moment. Then I went to my truck, which was parked in the employee lot just inside the gate, and I drove out. St. Joseph Medical Center is 14 minutes from the port on a dry night with no traffic. I made it in 11. It was 4:52 a.m. when I walked through the emergency entrance. I checked the clock on the dashboard before I got out of the truck. The waiting area had 4 people in it, spread apart, all of them looking at phones or at the middle distance. The intake desk had a woman behind it in burgundy scrubs, with her hair up in a bun and an ID badge that read Hernandez H. She looked up when I came through the doors. Her eyes went to my face, then down to how I was holding my arm, close to my side, stabilizing the rib, and back up to my face. "How are you doing tonight?" "I fell," I said, "on a staircase, left side. I think something's cracked." She was already coming around the desk. She had a tablet in one hand, and she was looking at my hands, I realized. I looked down at them too. They were shaking. Not slightly, I mean visibly, continuously shaking, in a way I hadn't registered until she made me look at them. "Let's get you a room," Holly said. "Can you walk okay?" "Yeah." She kept pace with me and asked the intake questions: name, date of birth, allergies, pain scale 1 to 10, and I answered all of them correctly and coherently, I think. But I couldn't stop looking at my hands. Edwin Fuller was the physician. He came in while I was sitting on the exam table in a gown, still shaking, and he did the rib assessment. Palpation along the lower left thorax, deep breath request, lateral compression. I made a sound I wasn't planning to make when he hit the right spot. Cracked, he said. It wasn't a question. Probably the 9th or 10th. We'll get imaging to confirm. Nothing surgical. Wrap and rest. Okay. I waited a beat. There's also, I need someone to contact whoever handles hazardous materials incidents at the port of Tacoma. The overnight supervisor there is not responding to radio, and I found the gate guard unconscious and… That sounds like something for a workplace incident report. Edwin was making a note on his tablet. Filing one with your employer's safety coordinator would be the appropriate channel. I understand that. But the safety coordinator is the person the supervisor said he was going to call before he stopped answering. So, Mr. Lynch, he looked up from the tablet. Not unkindly, but with the specific patience of someone redirecting a patient away from a thing they cannot help with. I can treat your rib and we can run a panel to rule out any other injury from the fall. The rest of what you're describing is outside my ability to address from here. File the incident report and let the port's safety team investigate. I stopped talking. He wasn't wrong, exactly. He just wasn't going to help. The imaging confirmed a cracked 9th rib. Edwin wrapped it, gave me a discharge sheet with instructions I read 3 times in the car and retained none of, and sent me home with a prescription for anti-inflammatories I didn't fill until the following afternoon. I found out about Brandon the same day. Not from anyone at the port, not through any official channel. I found out because I called the terminal's main line from my apartment at around 11 that morning, still in my work clothes, still unable to sleep, wanting to know if anyone had gotten into Gallery 9, or if Dean had ever called Davidson, or if anyone had checked on Harrison Curtis. The woman who answered the line said there had been an incident in the dispatch office overnight, and operations were running with a skeleton crew while things got sorted out. I asked what kind of incident. She said Brandon Dean had been found unresponsive at his desk at the start of the morning shift, that he'd been transported to a hospital, that there was no determined cause yet. She asked if I wanted to leave a message. I said no and hung up. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while after that. The rib made it hard to sit upright, so I ended up leaning back against the wall with one knee up, the same posture I'd been in on the control room floor 6 hours earlier. My hands had finally stopped shaking. The rain was still going outside the window, same rain probably, just moved inland. Brandon had told me to lock the door and stay put, and he would call back. He hadn't called back because he couldn't call back. I sat with that for a long time. They told us it was the pneumatic system. That's the official version anyway. Pneumatic system failure, unscheduled maintenance, 4 days of reduced operations while a contracted engineering team ran diagnostics and cleared the affected zones. I got the notification by text message at 7:43 in the morning, roughly 8 hours after I'd driven out of the employee lot with a cracked rib and wet boots and both hands shaking on the steering wheel. The text was boilerplate. Port operations communication. It didn't mention Dean. It didn't mention Curtis. It said nothing about Gallery 9. I read it sitting on the edge of my bed, still in my work clothes, and I thought, okay, pneumatic system. I didn't sleep that day. Not really. I got maybe 90 minutes sometime around noon, woke up with my face pressed into the fitted sheet and my left side screaming, and lay there listening to the rain until it stopped. 4 days later, I went back. I want to be honest about that part, because I think some people would have quit. I thought about it. I sat with the idea of just not going back, of calling whoever you call to resign from a port terminal job and letting that be the end of it. But the hazard supplement is 22% on top of base, and I had a lease and an ex-wife's attorney still sending letters, and the next best thing available to me at that point was overnight stalking at a warehouse in Federal Way for $12 less an hour. So I went back. The ribs still pulled on every inhale when I parked in the employee lot on the evening of November 7th. The wrapping helped. Not enough, but it helped. The terminal looked the same. That's the thing that gets you. It just looks completely normal. Concrete, floodlights, the smell of grain dust and salt water and diesel off the bay. I clocked in, got the handoff from the outgoing afternoon crew, found my clipboard on the hook by the control room door, exactly where I'd left it 4 nights earlier. I did my 3 a.m. walk. Floors 3 through 12, gauges, readings, everything logged. I did not go to the basement level. I went back to the 4th floor, sat in the folding chair with the cracked armrest, poured coffee from my thermos. New thermos. I'd left the old one somewhere during the descent that night. I honestly can't remember when. Probably the staircase. At some point during that first shift back, I pulled up the camera interface. Force of habit, or maybe something else. I'm not sure I want to examine it too closely. Gallery 9's camera feed was gone. Not offline, gone. The interface showed the mounting bracket address in the system, but when I tried to call the image up, I got a gray box and a single line of text, source not found. I tabbed over to the physical log, the one that tracks hardware status. The entry for Gallery 9's inspection camera read, Unit removed, scheduled equipment rotation, November 4th. November 4th. The day after, the next morning before I left for home, I went down to the basement level. Daylight, full overhead fluorescence, both things I told myself mattered. I stood in front of the Gallery 9 access hatch, or where it used to be. It wasn't there anymore. I mean, the opening was there. The frame was there. But the oval hatch with the 6-point dogging mechanism and the padlock through the hasp had been replaced with a flat steel plate, roughly 8 millimeters thick by the look of it, welded directly into the frame on all 4 sides. The welds were continuous and clean. Professional work. Someone who knew what they were doing had sealed that hatch so thoroughly that the only way through it now was a cutting torch. No label, no posted notice, no work order paperwork taped to the wall beside it. I pressed 2 fingers against the center of the plate, very lightly, and felt nothing at all. Cold steel, no vibration, no pulse. I took my hand back. I checked the incident log that same morning before I drove home. Logged into the system on the control room terminal, pulled up my employee number, and searched for the report I'd filed the night of November 3rd. The moisture alarm, the temperature spike, the camera feed, all of it. I'd filed it at 4:09 in the morning, between leaving the control room and descending the staircase. I remembered doing it. I had the timestamps in my head. The report wasn't there. What was there? Filed at 4:12 a.m. under an employee number that wasn't mine was a single entry. Routine sensor malfunction, Gallery 9 capacitance probe, flagged for maintenance review, 3 lines. That was all. I sat there looking at it for probably 2 minutes. Then I logged out, took my clipboard off the hook, and went home. That was 4 months ago, give or take. I still work the terminal. I told you why. The math hasn't changed, and I'm not going to pretend it has. What has changed is the route. I do floors 3 through 12 on every walk, same as always, but I go up, not down. I have not been below the 3rd floor since the morning I stood in front of that welded plate. I have not pressed my ear against any sealed surface. I have not pulled up the Gallery 9 camera address in the system, because there's nothing assigned to it now, and I don't need the gray box and the source not found sitting on my right monitor at 2 in the morning. The sensors read fine. They have since the terminal reopened. Gallery 9 stays cold, 48-49 degrees, consistent, nothing spiking. The moisture reading flatlines. Whatever the probe is measuring in there, it says nothing's wrong. I've learned to let that be enough. But some nights, not every night, not even most nights, I'm on the 4th floor catwalk doing a gauge check, and the pneumatic system cycles. Pneumatic systems make noise. That's normal. Pressure equalization, valve actuation, airflow through the bin headers. It's industrial infrastructure, it's loud and complicated, and I've worked here 11 months. I know what it sounds like. This isn't that. It comes up through the catwalk grating felt before it's heard. Low, slow, rhythmic, in and out, at an interval that has nothing to do with grain handling or pressure management or any operational function I can identify. I've timed it. I've stood on that catwalk above Commencement Bay with the cold coming off the water and counted the interval between compressions, and it comes out at somewhere between 58 and 62 seconds per cycle. Every time. I always stop what I'm doing when it starts. I don't mean to. It's involuntary. The way going still is involuntary. When you hear something, your body registers before your brain does. I stand there with the clipboard and the pen, and I listen to the terminal breathe. And I think about a welded steel plate, 8 millimeters thick and clean, professional welds on all 4 sides. And I think about whatever left a wet outline on a concrete floor shaped roughly like a body, possibly longer. Then I finish logging the gauge readings, and I go back inside. That's all. That's what I do. Something is still down there, sealed in the dark, and I go back inside. Okay, so that's Terminal 7. And look, the thing that gets me about this one isn't even the thing in the bin, it's that he just goes back. Cracked rib, cover-up, welded plate, all of it. And he goes back because the math didn't change. Like, that's so real to me. Survival mode makes you tolerate things you absolutely should not tolerate. Anyway, would you have gone back? Like, genuinely, for the money, for the stability, whatever your version of that is, would you have stayed? Let me know in the comments. And if you're new here, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from. I'll see you in the next one.